time to seize the day.
Now is the time to seize the day.
Send out the call and join the fray.
Send out the call and join the fray.
Dogs will be riding if we're united. Let us see.
Well, hey, everybody. This is Brent Allen, one of the hosts of the PewterCast. I am joined by my co-host, as always, for just about every single thing that we do, Ren Daxt. Ren, we're here tonight. It's Friday night. We have a very special show that we're doing for the folks out there.
We are. This is going to be a new weekly thing. What are we calling it?
Buc'In News? the Buc'In the News, something of that nature. So, guys, listen, here's the deal. Ren and I were talking, and you know, we have said really throughout the entire summer that lots of changes are going to be coming to the PewterCast, and, you know, kind of a slow rollout. And this is one of the more recent changes, actually, that we kind of came up with, of just saying, how do we serve our community better? How do we serve our fellow fans better? What can we do to improve the podcast and make the podcast better? And one of those things that we were looking at, of just realizing that, you know, by the time you get to the end of the week, there's been so much that's happened, because we do our stuff Sunday night and then we do one earlier in the week. But there's so much other stuff that happens throughout the week, we never really get a chance to talk about it. So the whole idea behind this is waiting until the team has finished practice, the final injury reports are out, and to just take a look and talk about the week and the news that has happened throughout the course of the week.
Yeah, well said, well summarized. That's what it's for. And also, a lot of the podcasts, I think there's only one that sort of comes out on Saturday. So this is information that you get, but you don't have people talking about it and telling you what it might mean, or, you know, what it might mean in the game that's coming up on Sunday. So this is another reason we're doing it. Like you said, all the practices are done, all the press conferences are done, all the injury reports are done, and like Brett said earlier, you know, we do the Sunday Instacast, and then we record the show Tuesday night. So it's out for, you know, the listeners Wednesday morning for the Wednesday
you guys have
morning.
You have the week to listen to it, right?
Yeah, and it's out for the Wednesday morning commute. And then, you know, all the other podcasts sort of come out in that same thing. And Thursday is really the last one you sort of get until Saturday rolls around. And I think this is going to be. I think it's going to be good. It's going to be a shorter podcast. This is going to be our regular 2.5 hour, 2 hour weekly shows. Short and sweet. Listen to while you're shopping. Listen to it while you're trimming the hedges. Listen to it when you're supposed to be working, I guess, maybe on the weekend. This will give you something to do. Yeah.
This is very much a fluid addition, a supplemental addition to our regular podcast. And as I mentioned, it's kind of fluid. Like, we're still figuring it out. So we're not exactly sure what it's going to look like from week to week, but we thought that this was something that we should go ahead and do. So with all of that said, why don't we go ahead and jump into it? Just kind of a basic format of what we'll be doing. We'll be taking a look at the transactions that happen throughout the course of the week. We'll be taking a look at maybe some of the press conferences or some of the little news bits that percolated to the top throughout the week. And then we'll finish off with the injury report and what that might mean for the game that we have coming up. So with that, transactions for the week. Of course, the big one that came out earlier this week, the Bucs have a brand new kicker in Patrick Murray. Everyone has been talking about him. It seems like that's about all we've been talking about, because honestly, it's the most major transaction. It's one of the biggest mid-season transactions, I think, that you could really have for a football team. What do you think, Ren?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you picked up a starter. There's no two ways around it. Someone who is going to, you know, 2 out of the 3 times the ball touches his foot, it's going to put points on the board, or it's not going to put points on the board. Of course, you know, that's extra points and field goals. Kickoffs, you know, don't count as far as points go. So this has been talked about, like, a lot, that, you know, you alluded to, because it happened so early in the week. It did happen on Monday,
and it was so major. Like, everybody knew about this. So, yeah,
especially it being a Thursday game. Friday it was talked about. Saturday, like, you started getting names of who's going to come in and try out. Same thing on Sunday. So this was a story for 3 or 4 days before we even knew that the Bucs were going to decide on Patrick Murray.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think what made it really interesting or fun to watch anyway, or listen to, or whatever you want to say, is all the predictions. And it seemed like everybody was kind of lining up behind one person or another. I think Patrick Murray certainly was the fan favorite. He was the guy that most people were sort of leaning towards as far as available people that were out there. And so, big shock, we got Patrick Murray. I do think the biggest shock, and we put this out there on Twitter, on the PewterCast Twitter account, the biggest shock, a transaction that actually happened, Ren, Nick Folk goes to IR.
Yeah, he gets fired. And
Quote,
he tells
unquote,
Jason Light that he's hurt himself.
Injured.
Yeah, so now he's injured.
Right.
As a team, the Bucs or any NFL team, you can't cut somebody who's injured. You got to put them in injured reserve until they're healthy, and then you can cut them. Now that I thought about it a little bit, I think it's a smart move by Nick Folk, basically giving himself an out why he did kick so poorly in those last 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
If another team does come knocking, because he can say, "Well, I tendonized my plant leg, I should get a shot." And at least with that story, it might be able to get him in the door for an open competition, where without it, they might not even give him a call.
So let me ask you this, Ren. How does putting Nick Folk on injured reserve benefit the Buccaneers?
It doesn't. 0.
I mean, the only thing that it could do is if something happens to Patrick Murray, we can pull him off IR at some given point, and we at least have him. I mean,
that is true. If Week 6, you can designate 2 players. I think it's 2. It's 2
so
or
this
1.
week, this coming week,
after Week 6. So this is week. This will be Week 5, right?
For the NFL. Well, this will be Game 5 for the Bucs, but this will be Week 6 for the NFL.
Okay, so after this week, you can bring somebody off. You can designate somebody returned from IR, but you can't bring him back to the roster till Week 8.
Okay.
And most people believe that it's going to be.
Please say Ryan Griffin.
Yeah, thank you. The
Please say
quarterback,
Ryan Griffin.
I really, there's nobody else really on there. So I guess you could say it's sort of maybe a safety net, but I don't think Buck fans would be happy, and I don't think Jason Light would feel comfortable bringing back Nick Folk, even if that did happen. Say Murray hurts himself.
I don't know, because I saw a few people that I think were giving serious consideration to the idea of bringing back Roberto Aguayo. Now, These were fans. These were not people within the organization. But I think there were some people that were giving serious consideration to that. Outside of the potential of bringing him back, which I don't think is going to happen, the only other thing that I can think is by putting him on IR, doesn't that give the Bucs – doesn't that retain his rights for the Bucs? Like, they could trade him. They could use him as something should somebody want to come get him. Like –
I guess
outside of just straight releasing him, and now he can double dip.
I like I said, I guess, but I don't think I don't think Nick Folt's enough of a name or of a kicker,
sure,
to sort of warrant that type of move, or someone would trade for him. That's in desperate need. The Eagles went and picked up the kid that was in Bengals camp, that rookie, and he seems to be kicking lights out. So there's kickers out there, and every GM has their list. GM and scouts have their list of guys. I mean, this is what they do. As they always have their list of like their next 10 guys up, and I'm sure they have and it's probably 10 deep at every position. So Nick Folk could be on some of those, but I don't think anybody would be desperate enough where they're going to give the Bucs a draft pick in the next couple of weeks if their kicker goes down. And to top it all off, he's injured. I guess they could be like, well, how injured is he? Well, if you want him for a 7th round draft pick, he's not injured anymore.
Right.
But that's just us assuming that's a fake injury. So
right. Maybe it really
The
is
evidence
something.
kind of points that way because it's sort of like, oh,
Well,
you missed these kicks, now you're injured. Huh.
It always seems like whenever they release somebody, I don't want to say always, almost always, it seems like whenever they release somebody, all of a sudden it's some sort of an injury release. I don't know if that's just to do the guy a favor or whatever, but I don't want to talk about Nick Folk anymore. Yeah. The point being, we've got Patrick Murray. Nick Folk is out. He's on quote unquote injured reserve. Other transactions. Let's talk about two more that came in. Two signings to the practice squad, both in the same position. Patrick O'Connor and Larry Webster. And Webster, thank you. And we released Austin Johnson, the fullback, from camp. And we still have not and we did sign Alan Cross. Sorry, we signed Alan Cross back to the practice squad late last week as well. But Patrick O'Connor, Larry Webster, these are defensive ends coming into the practice squad. Do you know anything about them? They're practice squad guys. So,
yeah, I mean, I do. Patrick, it's kind of funny. Speaking of things that are funny, they're both were drafted by the Lions, and the Lions have two of our defensive linemen from last year. They got Akeem Spence, and we'll release George Johnson. He ended up landing back with the Lions again. So now we took two of theirs. Patrick O'Connor, they're both sort of small school guys. He's a good downhill defensive end, tackles for loss, has the ability to get to the quarterback, can set the edge in the run, but his weakness seems to be lateral movement. Now, Larry Webster, also a small school guy, I think he went to Bloomsburg or something like that. He's an exact replica of Will Clark, the last defensive end we brought in. He actually had played some with Jay Hayes, the defensive line coach, so he was familiar with him. But they're both 6'6", they're both 275. They're both long and lean. He sort of has, I don't say sort of, he does. His dad played in the NFL. And basically, he's like a good size to speed ratio guy. It's like one of those diamonds in the rough. Maybe he might pan out to be a good edge rusher because they like his tangibles. They like his height, they like his weight, they like his speed. His 4.58 was the second fastest of all defensive linemen. At the combine in 2014. The only guy that beat him was Clowney from Texas, the overall number one pick. So he's got the speed, he's got the size, and like you say, the practice squad, we'll see. But Ryan Russell went down, dislocated his shoulder. They needed to bolster that position in case the next person goes down, because the Bucs definitely seem to get injuries in bunches at positions. We got safeties down and linebackers down again this week, so that's where they're thinking. But those are the guys, and that's where they're from, and those are pros and cons, I guess, strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, and we'll see if we wind up using these guys at all as the weeks go on. Like we said, they're just signed to the practice squad, so we'll see. It's just something to keep an eye on. They could be released here in the not too far future, but definitely this just seems more of an emergency depth signing than it is anything else. So those are the transactions that happened this week. Moving on, press conferences, Ren. This is kind of a round robin type deal. Anything that jumped out to you from the press conferences we had between any of the coaches or players, or things in the news that percolated to the top that drew your interest you want to talk about?
Cutters on Thursday, he said something that, sort of raised an eyebrow with me. He said they like to be 50% run pass on first down and 2nd and 6 and shorter. So I wonder if he goes in at halftime and sort of looks at his chart and says, okay, well, we're run heavy on first down. So he comes out in the second half and starts doing pass heavy on first down. Or vice versa, where maybe they pass a lot on first down and he looks down and he's like, oh, we only got 30 yards rushing the first half. Well, here's the reason, because I've only ran the ball twice on first down out of, the 10, maybe 12 that we've had. So that's something I'm personally going to start, looking at and sort of tracking. because if I can start to guess his play calling, because his just wanting to fall in that 50-50 ratio area, then I think that's going to become a problem. Not necessarily. If he would have told anyone, I don't think it would have ever come to light. But now that he said in a press conference, I'm going to be watching it.
Yeah, but I mean, don't you think that that's kind of something that coaches across the NFL probably do? Like, it's probably just it's the wisdom of coaching. You know, I mean, Dirk Cutter's pretty close to the vest when it comes to game plan and what he's wanting to do. So I don't know that he would have put this out there if it was going to in any way, you know, let the cat out of the bag or jeopardize anything. I mean, like that's what I was thinking when he said that, because I heard that same thing. I thought that was more educational than it was anything else. If this is where we'd like to be, and, you know, they obviously changed that according to the situation or, you know, but that's kind of their starting thing, that as most other offenses would in the NFL, I guess. Maybe, I don't know. I've never heard anybody else talk about it.
Yeah, and I understand that thinking as well. Like I said, it's just something I'm going to watch. But, you know, we didn't run the ball pretty much after the first series in the Minnesota game. And then he said something about at halftime, you know, it was either coming in or out of the locker room about running the ball. And they get the ball in the second half and they run on first down, they run on second down. It was a pretty good guess that was going to happen. So, and, you know, there has been a lot of hubbub, a lot of talk about, you know, Dirk Cutter's lack of creativity in play calling, or just, you know, poor play calling. So, you know, this could just be him saying something like that could just be adding fuel to the fire. But like I said, I'm just going to watch it to see. Yeah. Because if I can start guessing what he's going to do, then, you know, definitely NFL defenses and defensive coordinators, you know, that have all these unlimited resources just about, will be able to figure out what he's going to do.
Awesome. Okay, so there's Cutter. Anything else that kind of sprinkled up to you that you want to talk about from this week?
Well, I guess the biggest one is, because I just sort of talked about it on the main show, was Vernon Hargreaves.
Yeah, I knew you were going to bring this one up.
Yeah, it's a player versus scheme. And,
sure.
You know, Mike Smith sort of came out and said it's player. You know, we don't make them line up at 4 yards off or 6 yards off or 7 yards off, whatever you want to make it. There's sort of a ratio where you have to be. Like, maybe there's a 5 yard, like, you can't be closer than 4, but you can't be further away than 10. But anywhere in there you feel comfortable, you do it. And it would seem to me, and probably lots of Buck fans, that ratio or that box that you lay out there for him, his heels are on the back line. And it was that debate, is it scheme versus player? And so, you know, Mike Smith, you know, who's not one to throw players under the bus, but, you know, he's not going to lie to you either. Something I like about both, you know, Cutter and Mike Smith. He said, yeah, it's up to Vernon where he wants to line up. So I don't know who needs to talk to him to make him more aggressive, or even just scoot up 1 more yard, 1.5 yards, 2 more yards. But if this continues, something will have to be done. Like I said, back on the main episode, I'm still waiting till both linebackers get back, and then I need a 2-game sample of that. And also, it's going to matter who the quarterback is. You know, like I said, if he's facing like Drew Brees, Matt Ryan, that's going to be a little different than, you know, facing a Tyrod Taylor, Josh McCown. So where he lines up, I'm sure that has something to do with also the quarterback he's facing, and of course a wide receiver in front of him. But I'm not going to come down and make an official judgment on Vernon Hargreaves until both linebackers are back, and I need a 2-game sample with him there.
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about this as Mike was talking about this, Mike, like he and I are best buds.
Me and Mikey.
Yeah, Smitty. Me and Smitty. Having a beer, I was saying, "Hey, Smitty." But one of the things I was saying, so yes, he says that, hey, listen, they give the player, you know, leeway to play up, play down wherever they feel comfortable. But don't you think, especially 4 games into the season so far, right? Coach Smith looks, you know, he's not on the field, he's way up in the booth, right? So he's watching this, and obviously they're watching the tape, and they have all this. At some point, wouldn't the coaches look at Vernon and be like, dude, step up? Like, is this not something they should or would be coaching in him, at least during the week? Like, they may not be down there on the field saying, get closer, get closer, get closer. But even if they give him leeway, I would still think the coaches would coach him. And if he's just refusing to do what they tell him to do, I imagine there'd be repercussions. I can't imagine that's just the end of it. Of, well, we give them the leeway to do whatever they want. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, whatever.
I hear you, but I don't think that it doesn't sound like Vernon's telling them he's not going to do it. There's something going on where they're okay with Vernon, like I said, putting his heels on the end line as far back as he's allowed to play off. Mm-hmm. It seems like that's as far as he's going to play off. So there's something else in play. Is it, what Trevor said on the main show, is it that he just doesn't have the straight line speed? Mm-hmm. And, it's a lot easier to beat him deep than the NFL knows. And they're just sort of, trying to disguise that. Is it because of Beckwith and Glanton playing in the middle the last two games, mm-hmm. and they didn't want Vernon's back to the defense, mm-hmm. To be able to help in run support and things like that. So
but even you extend that one, it's not just the last two games. I mean, it's really been since the first series of the Bears game when Quan went out.
Right.
There's always been somebody who's been different there in the middle.
Correct, but Levante played most of the Minnesota game, and Vernon got torched mm-hmm. in the Minnesota game, short and deep. And we keep saying that we're just throwing that game out because it was just a weird week in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And Ryan Smith didn't look much better. It was weird. They were both there, mm-hmm. but they just couldn't make a play on the ball. I mean, they really weren't beat. They were all contested catches, but they were always caught. Case Keenum, oddly enough, was extremely accurate that day. But and that's the reason why I want to see Vernon play with the linebackers back, with Quana and David back. And then if he still keeps pushing back, then the question needs to be asked, which I was shocked it took that long for one of the beat reporters to be like, hey, what is this? Is this, mm-hmm. Is this man or scheme? It's like it took Tony Romo, saying it on the telecast like two or three times before the light bulb went off in one of the beat reporters' heads. Said, "Yeah, that is a great question. Why don't I ask that?" I mean, fans have been talking about Twitter mm-hmm. since
right.
the preseason. So, but anyway, after that 2 games, and if he still doesn't step up, and still things are still happening, then that's when you need to ask that question. Or maybe you can ask it now. Who knows? Ask the next press conference, Mike Smith. Well, okay, he gets his cushion. Are his heels on the back line? Mm-hmm. And is it going to get to a point where he has to step up? Or are you telling him to step up, except he's just not doing it? I mean, do you have to shrink the box on him? It's like, okay, you're supposed to get like a 7-yard box to stand in. Well, since you're not, we keep telling you to move up and you're not, you only get a 5-yard box. And that all comes down to coaching. So, it is head scratching because you think those moves probably would have been made by now, unless, like, I mentioned earlier, they're just hiding something. They're trying to hide something. They're trying to protect him some way.
Well, that all sounds like a good idea. I think I'll just call up some friends that we have down there and see if I can't get credentials for the day, and I'll head down there and ask them myself. What do you think?
Yeah, do it. Pick me up.
Pick you up on the way. There you go.
Pick me up on the way.
Hey, I know that it's the side door. It's over on the side. If anyone wants to know what we're talking about, go back in the podcast feed. Find One Short Day at One Buc Place. Very cool story that we get to tell you about a day that we got to have there at.
I got to play host.
Yeah, there you go. It was very fun. It was a great show. It's a good listen. It's just a good, fun listen. Yeah. All right. I've got something I want to talk about that I heard that I thought was a very interesting thing, and multiple people commented on it. Todd Monken, offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, said that Jameis Winston is better when the game is on the line. We all know that at least seems to be true. They asked Dirk Cutter about that, and Dirk turned around and said, well, I tend to think that the game is on the line right from the beginning of the game. right off the bat. And then they asked Jameis about it, and Jameis just said, nah, it's not really the game's on the line. It's just we start playing fast, and I get into a rhythm, and we're just playing fast, and it works better that way, which I would also agree that at whatever point in the game they go to a no-huddle type offense, it just always seems like our offense gets into a great rhythm. They get going, and they make progress. I know you can't go no-huddle the entire game, but I would always like to see them go no-huddle. I remember playing no-huddle in school, and it was the most fun. I loved no huddle. It was the best way to play, in my opinion. But what do you make of this? These three guys all kind of commenting on, Jameis is better when the game's on the line. Yeah, game's on the line right off the bat. It's not really either of those things. We're just playing fast.
They're all correct.
Yeah.
They're all right. Does Jameis seem to have his better throws, more accurate throws when they're in a hurry-up offense, or when he's, sort of out of the pocket when he can make plays? Yeah, he does. Should Jameis be able to do that as soon as the ball's kicked off? When toe meets leather. That's my Gene Deckerhoff. Yeah, he should. And you're also correct that they can't play. It sounds great, but you can't do hurry up. Especially with the defensive scheme they run right now with all the injuries of keeping everything in front of them. Because if the team is patient enough and doesn't shoot themselves in the foot with penalties, you can drive right down the field 7 yards at a time. Anytime you need a 7-yard pass over the middle, it's there. And you can just boop, 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 and down the field until they get to the red zone, they start to tighten up. So that is – the defense is on the field for 5, 6 play clock minutes. They're really on the field probably 10, closer to 15 minutes. And say they kick a field goal, or maybe the defense stops them, gets a turnover, gets a fumble recovery deep in their end. Well, if you think, okay, well, all right, Jameis is better. Hurry up, let's go. Okay, hurry up, boom, boom, and then you go 3 and out. There's, someone drops one. He overthrows somebody. Because it takes him a second. It's either that high pressure – we got 2 minutes, ball's in your hand, go down and score. He's not very good right now coming off the bench cold and ramping it up right away. He sort of has to be eased into it. He needs a play or two to sort of get his juices flowing before, he turns into that Jameis that we're talking about right now. So running the hurry up as soon as after that 5-minute, 6-minute time clock drive, and you do 3 and out and you punt the ball, the defense is back on the field and they're playing prevent, and now they've been on the field for a half hour real time. They've been on the field 10 minutes of the quarter, and you've only had the ball maybe a minute and a half. And by the end of the game, the defense is going to be spent and you're going to lose. So that's the argument against it, and that's the argument for where I sort of stand in Dirk Cutter's shadow on this comment is you need to be ready when you kick the ball off. The Buffalo Bills, they're the first team to try that. It seemed that, the 2-minute offense seems to work great because everyone goes down and scores when they need it, so let's, open the game with the 2-minute drill. The difference was they had Jim Kelly, who was in year 6, year 7, running this offense, and he's had the same head coach, and he'd been in the system a long time, where 3 and outs really didn't happen a lot. They had a bunch of Pro Bowlers everywhere on the team, all Hall of Famers actually, with Reed at receiver, and of course Kelly, and I don't know if Thurman Thomas is in the Hall of Fame or not. Definitely go College Hall of Fame, but anyway. It's just sort of a different animal, and Jameis is a different quarterback. So I would like him to be accurate and ready to go, and not necessarily, needing the game to be on the line before he gets laser focused. But once again, I think he's having a better year than he was last year. I don't pin the Patriots' loss on him at all. I don't. I blame it on the receivers. Offensive line is blocking for him. Doug's back. I think this team's really is just really starting to hit its stride, and I think you're going to see it Sunday. But sort of I hate when I ramble. I'm sorry. Put a button up on this. They're all right, but you can't, like you said, you can't run. Jameis,
you can't go 2 minutes every. I mean, this isn't Chip Kelly, right?
Yeah, you can't do it.
Yeah,
Jameis isn't accurate enough to run a no huddle offense every time.
Right. And I mean, and God, we'd wear our own guys out doing that. Our own offensive guys doing that. So, all right. Well, that's all I've got as far as stuff from the week. Did you have anything else before we move on to injury report?
As far as press conferences, no.
Yeah, press conferences, news articles, anything that came up that anything from this week.
Oh, we could talk about Doug Martin was on the radio Monday, and he pretty much backed up what Dirk Cutter said about how he thought he was gassed in the second half and the fourth quarter. Martin came on the radio and pretty much said, I was a little overwhelmed. He didn't actually use the word gas or I was tired. I don't think he would ever say that. But in his own words, he sort of said, the moment was he realized in that second half that he wasn't really in football shape yet. He was in great shape. I mean, I noticed that when he got in there. They're like, look, Doug Martin's in, and it was like a single shot on him, and he's got his hands on his knees. You could see like that muscle, like that little tricep muscle was just like ripping out and going down to his elbow. I go, yeah, he's in shape. He's fine. Yeah. But yeah, just didn't have his cardio back. He didn't, have his endurance or stamina back, whatever word you want to use.
And whatever that is that just jars your body when you get hit. I think it was Mike Smith who, before the season, talked about, man, there's nothing like getting out there with your first real game and what, like, the shock that does to your body. And this was Doug Martin's first real game. So, of course, what you're talking about there, to tie that back to what everybody else is talking about, is so many people calling, why didn't you give Doug the ball more? Dirk Cutter's a bad play caller because he didn't give Doug the ball more. Doug was running great. Why didn't you give Doug the ball more? Well, that's why. That's why. Very good. By the way, that was a fun radio show to listen to with Doug Martin. Yeah. I don't know that I'd want to listen to a weekly show with Doug Martin, but that one I thought was really good.
No, I think they got a really good formula. Casey really puts the players at ease, and she's really good at laughing at all their jokes, which really settles them down and kind of lets their personalities come through. Like the Cameron Brate one was good. The Mike Evans one was okay. Mike was a little harder to chip into that wall.
Did you hear Swaggy's? Chris Baker's? That was a good one.
Yeah,
He's fun to listen to. So
you don't. You just put my microphone on that guy's face and off to the races you go. So, but yeah, I really like that, and I know there wasn't one today because they traveled on Friday, but I'm also really enjoying the Dirk Cutter call-in shows on Fridays.
Yeah. I just wish we could get Dirk off his speakerphone in his office for that show.
Oh, will you stop this audio stuff? Oh my God.
Anyway, all right, let's move on.
Let's move on.
Injury reports.
Get off the speakerphone, Dirk.
Get off the speakerphone, Dirk. Injury report. Let's see here. Injury report out for the game. Quan Alexander, with a hamstring. Josh Robinson with a concussion. Ryan Russell with a shoulder. Keith Tandy with a hip. And questionable for the game, Robert Ayers, who was listed as full participation today. Levante David, who was limited. Ali Marpet, who was full participation today with an illness. And TJ Ward with his hip, also back at limited participation. So what do we make of the injury report, Ren?
Here's an interesting tidbit. On Buccaneers.com, not the app, but the actual web page, the injury report has TJ Ward listed as out. I'm sure it's a typo or a misprint, however you want to label it, because all the official reports that came out on Twitter, and even Scott and Casey, they always do like a short video on the Friday's injury report, who's out, who's not. Ward, they said Ward was listed as questionable. So, but so just throw that out there on the website. TJ Ward's actually officially out. Well, I guess that makes it a little easier for the inactives, on Sunday.
Yeah.
Quan's out. We knew that was coming. Josh Robinson. It'll be interesting to see who replaces him as a gunner. Ryan Smith's the other one. Probably. Who do you think's going to go down there? Like Reedy, maybe?
Speedy Reedy.
That's off the top of my head. Russell's out. He blew out his shoulder.
Peyton Barber, is he fast?
Yeah.
He's not like Gunner fast.
No, he's not like Gunner fast.
Well, you know what we need to do? We need to get Deshaun. Put Deshaun in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not do that. All right.
Let's do that. Watch Deshaun like pull a hamstring. Oh my God. Buccaneers fans would go ballistic. Oh my God. Oh, they would want Cutter fired immediately. There's a gray Audi in my spot. Have it towed immediately. That's from Caddyshack. Anyway, yeah. So no real surprises. I think Ward goes. I think Marpet goes. I think Ayers goes. And I hope Levante David goes because he was questionable last week, but he didn't go.
Yeah, I think what we wind up seeing. I think Ward will go, but he will probably not get the full rotation that he would normally get. I would say Levante, if we see Levante, it'll be very much on a trial basis. We'll just see. I think they may put him out there, see how he does. But they're not going to have him push it if they put him out there at all. But, Glanton has been doing pretty good in that spot. So, I think and that might even be a big piece of it too. Let's see how Glanton's doing and, let that happen. I think we'll see Robert Ayers probably in the full game as he would normally be in any other game. I do know Cutter actually came back and said, hey, I guess it's a back. Yeah, it's a back thing. That he's much healthier now than he has been actually even up to this point. Like in other games, I think, or something. I don't know what the full context.
He made it sound like it was like ever, like since he's ever been a Buc.
Yeah, that's It would
since he got injured in the Cardinals game last year. He really made it sound like Robert Ayers is the healthiest he is now that he ever has been since like that week 2 injury.
Right.
Which was surprising.
And of course, I think Alley's probably going to go full. We'll see him the whole game. Would be my guess. But like I said, I think Levante and TJ. If we see them, it'll be on a more limited basis. But of course, the other 4 guys being out: Quan Alexander, Josh Robinson, Ryan Russell, Keith Tandy, and you mentioned that makes the inactives a little bit easier. So we got 7 inactives. That's 4 of them. If history follows, we'll also see Leonard Wester and Joe Hawley be inactive as well because we don't have any other injuries on the offensive line, which just leaves 1 open spot on the inactives list. And you and I were talking about before the show a little bit who that could possibly be. We've got it narrowed down to 2 guys.
Dun.
Right, Peyton Barber, now that Doug Martin is back, of course, although he was active last week, or Silver Salinga, who was one of the inactives from last week. They deactivated a defensive tackle to get a little bit more help, somewhere else. But it seems like it could come down to those 2 guys, which to me, I think mostly says it's probably has to do with the health of the interior line versus help on special teams play.
Right.
And what do they need more?
Yeah. So basically, like you said, it comes down to how healthy Robert Ayers is. If he was full participation, but he's questionable, I think he's going to go. But if it's sort of, it's a back issue, backs could be tricky. So if it's iffy, I expect Salinga to be in there. So Robert Ayers doesn't have to move down at the defensive tackle spot, or Will Golston as much. They can keep their reps on the defensive end because they're down 1 defensive end because they are missing Ryan Russell. So if you're down 1 defensive end and Robert Ayers might, get injured, but like I said, backs would be tricky, you could see Salinga. But Peyton Barber doesn't play any offense anymore, especially since Doug back. It's going to be rare to see him there. But he does play a lot of special teams. I think he's played 65 snaps so far in special teams, and he's playing like somewhere like 80% of special team snaps. So replacing him is a big deal. So it's really 50-50 to me. I could see either one. Now, if you held a gun to my head and you made me make a decision, I'm going to say that Silver Salinga will not be activated. He will make the seventh inactive against the Cardinals.
I think I would probably agree with you there.
Yeah, and it's just because Barber plays so much special teams. If he didn't, I would Barber all the way.
Sure, because why would we actually activate 4 running backs for a game? That's it's just a lot. So, all right. Well, Ren, I think that's going to wrap us up unless there's something else that I'm not thinking of. You got anything else before we head out for the day?
Are we doing game predictions?
Do you want to?
No, I don't.
No, let's not.
No.
Mm-mm.
I think we need to end the show on something fun.
We do.
We do. We need to figure that out.
Listeners, this is the creativity process at work in the middle of stuff
that usually happens when we're not recording.
Right.
This is how our conversations go before we push the record
This
button.
is why we have 5-hour record sessions.
It is. So, did you see the new Star Trek Discovery? Then that takes a half hour.
All right. Well, we'll figure out. Hey, listen, listeners, if you've got any fun ideas of how we can end the show in a good, fun way that's not score predictions, shoot us an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. We would love to take your suggestion. Or find us on Twitter @thepewtercast, facebook.com/thepewtercast. We do respond to all forms of feedback. Ren, where can the good people find you and your work out there on the internet?
Find me at the Pewter Plank on. I always have a reoccurring article on Fridays and Saturdays. My one Friday came out today, the sit, start, and sleeper player for the Buccaneers. And then tomorrow we'll hit the game plan, attacking and defending the Cardinals, what I think the Bucs could possibly do. If I was a defensive / and offensive coordinator, I'd get paid a lot of money. And this would be my game plan going against the Cardinals. Do those every week, but you can find me on Twitter @Rendax, REN_DAXT. I'm always down to talk Buccaneers football. And you can find me at Brent Allen Live, Twitter, Facebook, all the different social medias. It's all the same thing across the board. So, guys, we've got the Cardinals coming up this week. Bucs are traveling. They should be landing here. I think they're probably still in the air right now as we speak. No, they landed. Really? Because they're supposed to not get in until real late. And it's not quite real late over there just yet. But whatever. They might have been landed. They're in Arizona. Might have been landed. What's the invasion? The Bucaholics. Bucaholics invading. Oh, yeah. If you're going to that, make sure you wear orange. That's the color they're taking. Don't take red because, Arizona's that color. So taking orange, Bucaholics invading Arizona. Can't wait to watch that on TV. Join us at 9 o'clock Sunday night for the Instant Cast. That is a live call-in show. You can join us on Mixlr.com/thepewtercast. You can call in and let us know your thoughts on the game. And then we'll be back later that week for our full main episode. Until then, guys, we'll sign off saying what we always say, go Bucs.